Okay, I think we'll jump right in, and we may have a couple of other people join us, but other than that, we'll go ahead and get started. So I want to say welcome to everyone as we're winding down our regional meetings and where we're focusing on the equity training. And so I want to introduce myself, and then we will do brief introductions for other people who are also at the coordinating board before we turn it over to Rachel. So I'm Ruby Stevens-Morgan, the Director of Strategic Planning and Analysis with the coordinating board. I've been with the agency for 8 months. I come from an institution in Texas where I was the Director of Institutional Research for almost 9 years. And I've worked also in administration in K through 12. And I have taught in K through 12 and also at the post-secondary education level. So I've worked with data for many years, so I understand where we may have some of the challenges when it comes to working with students, and also the challenges that when it comes to data. By the same token, I also understand the rewards in working with students and data. And so they're both sides of the coin. And so we want to kind of focus on equity today and dealing with equity and how we can use qualitative data to kind of focus on some of those equity concepts and how we can relate those to our students and our work with students. And so basically we're going to do the equity training with Rachel first, and then the last hour we will introduce our Tableau dashboards, and Elizabeth and Luis will lead those efforts, and then there will be some time for questions and answers at the end. So with that said, I want to first introduce to you Elizabeth, whom most of you probably heard from as she was scheduling these meetings. So I will have her introduce herself.
Good afternoon, everybody. So we're really looking forward to having the equity training today. A little bit of my background. I have been at the coordinating board for a little bit over 1.5 years. I was in strategic planning and funding, and I recently transitioned to our newly created project management and improvement office at the agency. I have been in higher ed since about 2012. Before I came to the coordinating board, I worked at institutions in various capacities, including teaching, and I did serve as the director of institutional research at one of the community colleges here in Texas for about 4.5 years. So I'm really looking forward to the training today and engaging with everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, Elizabeth. And next will be Luis, whom most of you probably already know because he's your point of contact at the coordinating board, but I want to give him a chance to say hello up front.
Hi, everyone. It's nice to see a good mixture of familiar faces and some new faces this afternoon. I'm looking forward to the discussion because I know South Texas is going to bring it. They're going to show the regions how it's done. So the high bar for you guys. But at the 11 o'clock hour, I'm going to show you the dashboard that we built for your use for the regional work. And I hope you find it useful, and I'm looking forward to that.
Thank you, Luis. And with that said, I think that's all of the introductions for the coordinating board. So at this point, I will turn it over to Rachel, and she will introduce you all to this training that we want to do with the equity. And this is a process that we started at the coordinating board. And so there are some leadership people that are in leadership positions and those that have worked as point of contacts with the regions that have gone through a few sessions of training with the on equity. And so we wanted to be able to share that with you all as well. So at this point, I will turn it over to Rachel. And thanks, everyone. Welcome again. And now I will turn it over to Rachel.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Ruby, for the introduction. And thank you to the coordinating board for having me here today. I just have to tell y'all, I'm so excited to be speaking with South Texas today because my family from South Texas. My mom is from Harlingen and my dad is from San Antonio. And San Antonio, South Texas can get a little bit controversial, but the point is it feels like I'm coming home with y'all. So I'm really excited about today's session. That being said, I want to acknowledge what is going on in this session, but also what's on outside of this session, and that is Black Lives Matter. So much being confronted in our world, not only with Black Lives Matter, but also with COVID. I know that a lot of us are feeling a lot, are grieving a lot, are a lot. And I first want to hold space for that. And I also want to let you know that this session is exactly the place to bring those questions, bring those curiosities, bring those frustrations. So this is the place where we can really do some work in processing. But first, I just want to pause and acknowledge Black Lives Matter and the deaths that we continue to confront and continue to face. So I'm going to pause here for just a bit. Okie doke. With that in mind, let's get into our work today. Names are a huge, huge signifier. So I really want to know what your name is. I want to know how to pronounce it, but I also what it actually is. And so some of us have our names already up: Cindy, Elizabeth, Jose, Catherine. That's great. For those of us who may not have our names up, I'm going to rename you now or help you rename yourself. You will see in the corner of your gallery view 3 little dots. Click those 3 little dots and press rename. You can also go to participants on your dashboard and find, click more and click rename. And you can rename yourself with your first and last name like I did, Rachel Franco, or you can just do first name, last initial. But we're going to take the time to go ahead and create our name tags. Let's see. I'm just going through here to make sure we're all set up. If you have any questions, chat me or unmute yourself and I can help you set it up. R. Garcia, do you need any help with setting up your name tag? Garcia 155.
Yes.
Cool, cool. I can do this for you actually. So what is your first name?
Rosina, R-O-S-E-N-A.
Rosina, awesome. Thank you, Rosina. We've got Debbie here. Lovely, we are, thanks for going ahead and creating your name tags. That is gonna be so much more useful whenever I am cold calling on you. So I appreciate that. Let's go ahead and dive into our agenda, and I'm to cold call Steve from UTSA. Steve, if you could unmute yourself and read today's agenda, I would so appreciate it.
Okay. Hello, everyone. So first, welcome and acknowledgement, community agreements. Why did you come today? Why are we here? Today's objectives, our role working towards equity and education, feedback, and then a question and answer period at the end.
Lovely. Thank you so much, Steve, for being our first cold call guinea pig. Are there any questions so far on the agenda? Thumbs up, good to go. Awesome, cool. I like your thumbs up, thank you. We'll go ahead and keep it moving then. I wanna discuss some Zoom agreements for us. The virtual learning space is much different from the in-person learning space, and we are all experiencing that, both the grows and the glows of that. I would like for each of us to attend today's learning session just as if in person. So to that end, if at any moment you need to jump out of the room, turn off your screen, I totally get it. Just let me know in chat, just as if you were to excuse yourself from an in-person session. I would also ask that each of us engage all in. So it's my assumption that the more that we engage with each other, the better this session will be. Let's really take advantage of this time together and be all in on our learning today. Let's give it a chance. I'm also going to ask that we stay muted. That is super important for obvious reasons. Not going to go over it anymore. Stay muted. I'll ask you to unmute yourself whenever you participate. These next three, we're going to practice a bit. So I would like for each of us to have our camera on. I am looking at each of you right now with your camera on, and it helps me so much as a facilitator to be able to see those micro expressions, to be able to see you processing or questioning, or frankly, to see you straight up bored helps me know to shift a little bit. So we are going to go ahead and turn all of our cameras off. Go ahead and press stop video. And right now I'm watching each of you turn your camera off. Lovely, it disappeared. And now, since we will all have our camera on, go ahead and press start video and join us back on camera. Thank you, Sam, I see your note. I got it, Susan, thank you for that heads up. Lovely. So I can see each of your lovely faces. This is great, thanks for joining me with your camera on. We're also going to use chat only when prompted. I do have a couple of co-hosts from the coordinating helping me out and helping me respond to chat, but there are some there's some pre-planned times where we'll be using chat, so I'll simply ask you to engage in chat either by anonymously chatting me privately or to everyone. So let's practice real quick. Describe in one word how you're feeling about today's session. In one word, respond in the chat. How are you feeling about today's session? You can either respond privately to me or to everyone. I am feeling excited about today's session. Cindy's feeling ready. Ruth, enthusiastic. Elizabeth, engaged. Ah, great words. I get it, Catherine. Thank you so much. Catherine said something privately. When y'all tell me something privately, I'll respond, but I won't share what you're sharing with me, just as a point of consent. Steve, ready. Debbie, ready. Oh, y'all are just stealing from each other. Renee, ready. Susan, ready. Great. Vanessa is curious. Now I want to go ahead and switch to cold call. So cold call is going to be in use. You should be feeling pretty icy already. Susan, if you could unmute yourself, I'm cold calling you. Tell me how you are feeling ready. Tell me more about that. What are you ready for?
Well, because of the topic right now is so on everybody's mind, shall we say. So I'm interested to see how we could use the actual data, especially in a place like RGV.
Mm-hmm. So it sounds like, Susan, you're feeling ready to respond to the moment, to the timeliness of what's going on. That's great. Thank you, Susan, for being a cold call participant. These are our learning agreements. So we got through our Zoom agreements. These are our learning agreements. And I want you to capture, while I'm speaking through them, one learning agreement that you're going to hold on to today. So we're going to be practicing using I statements. So much of our session today is really going to be us speaking from our own perspectives. I can only speak from my perspective as a Mexican-American woman born and raised in Austin, Texas. And I certainly can't speak for every Mexican-American woman. That would just be silly. So I'm not going to speak on behalf of groups, and I'm not going to speak for groups of people. Instead, I'm going to be speaking from my point of view using I statements. We're also going to be owning our impact today, owning the impact of our institutions, owning the impact of our own actions. Oftentimes in difficult conversations about identity, race, sexuality, gender, we want to explain away our intent. Oh, that wasn't my intention. I'm so sorry. But really, what's so much more important is the impact of our words. Finally, we're going to be seeking to understand, as we use those I statements, we really want to hear from each other our experiences. All of the weird, all of the wonderful, all of those moments that you have gone through, we want to seek to understand each other. Then we will be accepting and expecting non-closure. So Susan spoke on the immediacy of this moment. And I want to name here that we will not receive all of the answers. We will not receive closure at the end of today's session. And that's really like a thought for life, but I want you to know that we can't expect to have all of the answers. And actually that's in contrast to what the work actually is. Equity work takes time and it's a process, a much longer process. So we shouldn't expect to have closure at the end of today and walk away with, I know this, I know that. You will receive some good things today, but accept and expect non-closure. Now in breakout rooms, I want you to talk with one other colleague about which learning agreement you are going to prioritize. Which learning agreement will you prioritize? I'm going to send you into breakout rooms. And I know a couple of us might be having a hard time getting to breakout rooms. Oh, looks like we're already there. Catherine's there. Do you need any help getting to breakout rooms? Okay. Say might not be there, so I'm going to send Debbie to breakout room 5. I see a few of y'all already came back. That's great. Welcome back. Awesome. Welcome back, everyone. I see you floating right back in our room. I would love to hear more about what you're discussing. Which learning agreement are you prioritizing? I still have a couple of folks rolling in. Awesome. Ruth, I would love to hear from you. If you could unmute yourself, which learning agreement are you prioritizing today?
For me, well, I had 2 of them, but first is the owning the impact, and secondly was to seek to understand.
Tell me more. Why are you choosing owning impact, seeking to understand? What's salient about that for you?
Well, for us, we're really diving down into equity and in overall equity-minded institution. So for impact in particular, for me, I'd like to be able to see how we can close the gaps on our metrics. In terms of, we see increases overall in successes, and all groups are improving. However, within the equity, we need to close those gaps in there.
Absolutely, Ruth. So what I hear you saying is you're really focusing on the impact of your institutional accountability, which we will certainly get into in the second half of our presentation. And how can we advance our equity goals in line with 60 by 30? That's great. That's definitely the work that we're going to be doing today. And you'll see a lot of our identity work is going to play into advancing those equity goals. So we'll get to that. Thank you for sharing, Ruth. So why are you here with us today? And what do you hope to get out of today? I want you to respond to one of these two questions in chat. You can either chat me privately or chat everyone. I would like to know from each of you, why are you here with us today? What do you hope to get out of today? Debbie, right off the bat, resources. Debbie's looking for resources. I really hope that you will walk away with at least 2 resources today, Debbie. That's my hope for you. Catherine, I'm with Debbie. Learning strategies, says Ruth. You will definitely get some resources, some strategies for thinking through equity-minded leadership. Steve says a deeper understanding and resources. South Texas, I love your engagement and your participation. This is great. Looks like a lot of us are seeking the same thing. Resources, strategies. I want to walk away here with something tangible. Susan says understanding. Cindy says learning from colleagues, better understanding of data equity. Great. I really appreciate these responses because that helps me ground my facilitation in pointing out the resources that you can use, not only with students, but also with colleagues. Great. So I want to share a little bit with you why I believe we're here today. And I believe we're here today to do 3 things, or to name 3 things. And that's first, we're here today to start a conversation. This is just a start to the work. And there is so many more conversations that I know you have already had leading to today's sessions, and you will have more conversations after today's session. I want to recognize that this is just a start. I also want to name that to this start, we are going to be starting by looking at our own experiences. So we are really going to be talking about what's beneath the surface, thinking about the ways that we grew up, thinking about the messages that we received around values, around hard work, around education. We're going to be looking at our own experiences as a starting place, because when we begin to see the full spectrum of our own humanity, let's be real, sometimes we dehumanize ourselves in this work. When we see the full spectrum of our own humanity, then we are able to see the full spectrum of humanity of the students with whom we partner with and the communities we partner with. So today is all about humanizing the work by the space of our own experiences. I also want to acknowledge, and I said this a little bit before, that this work takes time. It takes time, and this work is on a spectrum of understanding. So in anti-racist work, we talk about anti-racism is not you're racist one day and you're anti-racist the next day. That's not how it works. Instead, we are always existing on a spectrum, and we're working through that spectrum. So this work really requires time. It requires toolkit building, knowledge sharing. That's everything that we're doing today. And I want to note here that for some of us walking in today's session, we might already have the language of equity, and we already might know the right things to say, but we might not be living by equity values on a day-to-day basis. We may have the language of equity, but we may not yet be practicing the labor of equity. And that is where we get into some frustration and where we get into some tricky spots. So we're really going to be talking about how can we move from language to labor. Awesome. You might be wondering, who is Maya Consulting and who is Rachel Franco? Well, Maya Consulting is a team of educators based here in Austin, Texas. And we are working towards equity in education through 3 work streams: strategic planning, project management, and diversity, equity, and inclusion advising. So this is a diversity, equity, inclusion learning session. Really, my bread and butter is working one-on-one with C-suite, one-on-one with leaders of how can we implement diversity, equity, and inclusion in the work that we're doing, because it really, really takes some strategy to do that. It's so simple to send out a statement of how we stand by our communities, but it's so much more to do the action. So I help with the action work. I grew up in Austin, Texas, as you know, and I grew up in a single parent household with chronic trauma, chronic stress, and that really grounded me in these values of belonging. And from my childhood experiences, I attended DePaul University, go Blue Demons, in Chicago, Illinois. And from DePaul, I really got rooted in this work around serving those who have been, or really partnering with those who have been historically and systematically marginalized. From DePaul, started teaching in Detroit, felt like I didn't know enough, wanted to go back home to Austin to be with my gente and teach my gente, teach my people. And again, I felt like I didn't know enough. This little güerita walking into the classroom telling people this. So I didn't know enough, knew I didn't know enough, and decided to learn more by going to Harvard, earning my Master's of Education in language and literacy. So what that means is I'm most concerned about how does identity and language impact lifelong learning outcomes. That's my bread and butter. Enough about me, let's learn about today's objectives. Samantha, could you unmute yourself and read today's objectives for us?
Sure. Review equity as it relates to the education system. Connect our identities to equity-minded leadership.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Samantha. Fist to 5. How do you feel about these objectives? 5, I got it, I understand it. 3, kind of. 0 or a fist. I'm not sure what these objectives are. Can you go ahead and show me where you at with these objectives? I got a 5 from Ruth, 3 from Samantha, 5, 5, 4. I've never seen a 4 before. Okay, South Texas. 4 somewhere in between, a 4.5 maybe. Cool. All right, so let me give you a little bit of a precursor. This first objective is going to be really quick. I'm really going to give it to y'all to tell me. We're going to level set on the definitions of equality versus equity. And I want to know from you what those differences are. Then the bulk of our work will really be connecting our identities to equity-minded leadership. And we're going to be really doing some story sharing, some cuentos. I hope you don't mind me using Spanglish in this group because I feel like at home. So I'll do that maybe sometimes, maybe not. But we're going to be connecting our identities to equity-minded leadership. That's the work. Okay, it seems like we're in a good space with those objectives. Let's keep it moving then. First objective, reviewing equity as it relates to the education system. I'm not going to cold call. I want to ask for a volunteer here. What's the difference between equality and equity? Oftentimes we use those terms interchangeably as if they mean the same, but they don't mean the same. They're not synonymous. So you tell me, what is the difference between equality and equity?
Can I give it a shot, Rachel?
Oh, please. Who is this?
Okay.
Debbie.
Debbie. And I have to admit I've seen this before. So
I'm sure
equality means that you provide the same thing to everyone. Equity means that you adjust it to their needs.
Boom, session over. I'm gonna go ahead and close my laptop because we're done. Absolutely, Debbie. So how do you see those definitions playing out into your work in education?
I think sometimes we try to come up with solutions like a one-size-fits-all, but that doesn't work. You have to really provide to the people that you're trying to provide services to exactly what it is they need to be successful.
I'm going to push you a little bit further, Debbie. just because I like y'all and I like you. Do you find, or I should say, what hurdles do you find within your work in advancing equity?
I can tell you specifically because I deal with a lot of students on a daily basis that they sometimes don't have the resources at home to help them navigate the college process, the college going process. Like they don't have someone to give them advice or tell them what needs to be done first or second or third. So a lot of times when they come to us for help, they come multiple times so that we can walk them through the process. And so, you know, again, I wish there was a better way for them to have access maybe to the information they need before they get to college about what, you know, going to college is all about and what all the terms mean and how the processes work. But I see more and more that they come to us for that help and through the whole process from freshman to senior year. And so I guess just that they don't have that support, not that they don't have support at home, they just don't have the knowledge sometimes, because we have a lot of first generation students and they come with their parents, so they're all kind of learning together.
Absolutely. Thank you, Debbie, for giving us that context. What's coming up for me right now and what we'll get into throughout this session is, yes, our students have so many needs when they come to our campuses, you're right. And how can we change as institutions where we start to see not those are needs from a point of deprivation from the students in the community, but instead we as an institution need to change the way that we're operating and what we are asking for from our students in our communities. So we'll get into a little bit of that work today. So Debbie gave us some real handy definitions of equality versus equity. Equality is really one size fits all, where equity is giving people what they need in order to be successful. And I want to note here, you can grab these handy definitions if you like them. If it doesn't apply, let it fly. But I want to note here that equity in education really is the starting place to our work. So I was talking to my cousin about this weekend, and he was saying what we often mess up as educators is we think equity is the end goal for us to create a more equitable society. But really, it's the starting place for our students. So when we create equitable policies, practices, and we have equitable leaders in our institutions, then can students have access to these learning opportunities, these rich learning opportunities that in effect change our world. Because we are not looking to change our students, we are looking for our students to change our world. See how just that switch, that flip, shifts our mindset. Why is it so important to keep the definition of equity in the forefront of our mind? Go ahead and respond in chat. You can either respond to me privately or respond to everyone. I see y'all thinking through this. Why is it important to keep the definition of equity in the forefront of our mind? Luis, I like your response. Debbie says so that we don't apply the fixes to everything or to everyone. You're right, Ruth. There are misinterpretations of what equity means. So we have to level set on that definition to get started. What else are we thinking? I know that we're typing right now. Samantha, if we don't, then I believe we may tend to resort to old habits that could potentially hurt students. Samantha, what I love about this response is it really gets back to that practice part of the work we need to always be going back to our resources, reviewing them, gathering more resources, toolkit building, knowledge sharing, so that we don't continue to harm the students and the communities that we partner with. Cindy, it reminds us that all come with different experiences, and we need to be ready to support those that need additional support. You're absolutely right, Cindy. Let's take a proactive approach. Ah, Debbie, I knew South Texas was going to be awesome. Y'all are. We need to include the students. We're trying to get help in the solution, trying to help. That's right. Let's ask the students. Let's ask our communities. Let's really, really touch what they are saying they need in order to be successful, and design policies and practice based on what they're telling them. Let's believe our students. Let's believe our communities. Awesome work. I could spend here just on this question all day. Frame and inform our practices to foster student success and understand what they need. Absolutely. We're going to get into that work today. So we're already at objective 2. We flew through objective 1. I still got chats coming in. Yes, Samantha, I totally agree. Awesome. I want to know from you, how do you gather qualitative data on students? Because my argument here today is that if we better understand qualitative data, then we can really impact those equitable policies and practices and leadership for students. So I'm going to launch a poll here. How do you gain qualitative data from your students? We're filling out this poll right now. How do you gain qualitative data from your students? 4 of us have responded, 12 participants. About 9 of us have responded. I'm going to leave this up for just 30 more seconds. I'm looking for one more response. You know I have high expectations for y'all. Cool. Okay, so here it is. It looks like the majority of us gain qualitative data from our students with surveys and then with interviews. For those of us who chose surveys, or for those of us who chose interviews, I would love to hear from a volunteer. If you could unmute yourself, walk us through the process of gaining qualitative data via surveys or via interviews. What methods do you use? How do you respond to the data? How do you make it actionable? Love to hear from you all. I think one of you has started to unmute yourself.
So I'll talk a little bit about the interview in particular. So I am new to IHE and I come from a K-12 background. And what we did was we actually brought in groups of students once a month and basically had round tables with our students, asking them questions about the school district. And depending on what we were trying to focus on, that dictated the, I guess, the content of the question. And we were in the process of trying to develop a strategic plan for the entire district in certain areas. And so we wanted to be sure that we had the students' voice in developing some of the programs. So we used them, and I will tell you, as I indicated in the chat, some of our best answers and solutions came from the students directly.
Awesome. Thank you, Samantha, for sharing. I saw some head nodding from your colleagues. I think we can all agree here that when we center the student voice and we have student-led learning or student-led initiatives, That is so, so much more valuable. And there is a difference between student-led and student-centered, right? We want to make sure that we're doing student-led actions. So the qualitative data that I'm hoping that you can gather from these exercises is more rooted in relationships. So the examples that Samantha gave really on the systems level, which is absolutely right on. We need systems work. This is systems work. But my approach putting forward today is let's start with relationships. Relationships within ourselves, relationships with each other. So my argument here is that by making micro relational changes, we can have macro institutional impacts. Micro relational changes. We've heard about microaggressions before, right? Death by 1,000 paper cuts. I could give examples, but I know y'all have them. I want us to move towards, instead of microaggressions, let's do micro affirmations. Let's make changes relationally to impact our systems. So I've got this one exercise that I would love for y'all to use in your institutions. It's called 3 things exercise. Write down in front of you. I see some of y'all getting your pen and paper ready. Love it. 3 things you're passionate about. 3 people you love. 3 identities that are your most salient. 3 events in your life that really shaped who you are. And my push for you here is go under the surface. Really think about these responses. And I'm going to give you, I'll give you 3 minutes to respond. And then I want you to be prepared to share every single one of these 3 things, these 12 things, with a colleague. Okay, timer is on. Luis, I see you clowning over there. Stop distracting us, man. Trying to be the class clown. Come on.
I'm thinking. That's I do my thinking. Okie doke, my timer went off. Can you just give me a simple
thumbs up, I'm ready to go, or give me a thumbs down if you need a little bit more time. A little bit more time, got it. I'm gonna give just about 20 more seconds, and then I'm gonna send you to breakout rooms to share with a colleague. And remember, when you're sharing with colleagues, we're really hoping to practice seeking to understand. We're not anticipating what we're gonna say next. Instead, we're really listening to the other's experience. Okay, I'm gonna send you to breakout rooms. And y'all are headed to breakout rooms now. Awesome.
Jose, are you there?
Yeah.
Oh. I didn't know. Apparently I was scrolling and clicked on something and I was like, oh, I'm in a room. So which area of discussion is this?
I don't think we're in a room. I think we're the only people that were not in a room.
Oh, I see. Okay, because I'm like, how did I get in here? And I saw your name and I'm like, okay, it's safe for me to say something. I just saw it was two of us.
No, we're the only ones not in a room.
Gotcha, gotcha. Okay, well, I will let you go then.
Okay.
Look, and I'll go back and keep working on my equity report.
Good. Let me know.
All right, talk to you later.
Questions. Okay, bye.
All right, bye.
Awesome. Welcome back, y'all. I love seeing you jump back into the session. It's so good. Really want to hear more from Cindy. Cindy, if you could unmute yourself. When I was in y'all's breakout room, you talked about how you are really passionate about seeking joy. That is huge. I have not yet heard that in these sessions. Can you share with us how you're passionate about joy or seeking joy shows up in your work? How does that part of you show up?
Well, I think that I was sharing with Samantha that at this point in my life and in my career and my work, that I really think, you know, we prioritize, and there are things that bring us peace and we know are the right thing and that bring us joy. And there are, and you know, you mentioned work, and a lot of times in our work, there are things that don't necessarily bring us joy, right? But I think in our work, it's more a sense of purpose and knowing we're doing the right things, where in my personal life, it's more about a sense of myself, peace with what I'm doing, where I am. So it's really, I guess at work, it's about joy of purpose, and at home personally, it's about being comfortable with the person that I am and feeling true joy. Because life is just too short to not experience joy on a daily basis.
Cindy, I completely agree. And I give you kudos. Kudos to you for bringing this humanistic part of the conversation to the forefront. I really appreciate that. Something that I'm thinking through is, how can we bring about that joy of purpose that you speak on? How can we bring that out for our students? Our students have a lot on their plates. How can Cindy be an example to her students of, let's bring in joy to the mix to do this work together? How can we see those joyful parts of our students instead of what we often see, which is how much they need, how much we need to support them? What are they already bringing to the table? That's what we'll get into more. I don't think that point can be missed. I want to hear from Steve. Can you share, and can you unmute yourself and share with us, how do these parts of you show up in our work?
Parts of me.
Either the three people you love,
Yeah.
the events.
Well, I think it's the events. As I was telling my colleague that I was a decade plan kid, so first gen, went and learned how to bartend rather than go to school, and so I was 10 years to get my first degree, and that's why I stayed. Right? I mean, I wanted to pay forward the opportunities. I met my wife at UTSA. And so it's really those things. Being the first one in my family, my little brother went on to, and got through his degree a lot quicker. And so it's that piece. And I've got colleagues that worked with me. Mentoring is important to me. And so I've got colleagues that when I ran the supplemental instruction program, actually took that over. And now they've got their career at UTSA is coming up on 20 years. So it's, paying that forward and building people and finding commonality and purpose is a big part of what shapes how I go about my work.
Steve, thank you for sharing those parts of you with us and with your colleague. First of all, congratulations on all of the work that you have done and you have achieved. And then also, I love hearing how it's rippled into your family, into your siblings. I've experienced that joy, to use Cindy's word. I've experienced that joy as well, and it's quite a feeling. What I want to know is Steve, are those parts of you showing up in your work with students? Do students know about those parts of you?
They do. Unfortunately, as you move in your career, sometimes you don't get to interact with undergraduate students, right? So I'm going to find the opportunity at some point to go back and work with freshmen, but I do teach graduate students. And so this is where we ground. I really do. I mean, I've done talks with students who've been on probation, getting ready to be dismissed. and shared my experiences and my story and saying there are ways, right? And part of it, what I've looking back and my reflecting, what I wasn't very good about was seeking help, right? Or even knowing to where to go, or even acknowledging, you know, it was almost from my perspective, the way I was raised, perceived as a weakness if you ask for help from people. And so sharing, helping people understand that this is not, it's not that, right? It's a strength to be able to say, I need help with something. And so I do share it with the students that I do get to interact with. We do have students in our office, and so they're stuck with me. I was an academic advisor during part of my career, so they're kind of stuck with me giving advice still, not around what courses to take, but about how to approach school. So that's how I do that.
Awesome. It sounds like you're already translating that Windows mirrors work in your day-to-day, which is, I know that there are students on our campuses who are just like Cindy, who are just like Steve, who have these parts of them that they desperately, desperately want to have come out on our campuses. Our students, I believe, want to be known, want to really be known by the institutions that they chose to attend. They chose to attend our institution as a reason, and they want to be known by us. How can we better know our students and be responsive to their needs and all of those weird and wonderful parts of them? We're now going to be moving into where I'm from. Some of you in our first session got a taste of this. We're going to go a little bit deeper. And we're actually going to move quite a bit faster because, of course, South Texas, y'all, we're just talking. We're just story sharing. So we're going a little bit slower, and that makes sense. We're going to pick it up a bit. So this is another activity that you can use directly with students, or I encourage you to use it with colleagues. I use this exercise with colleagues. It really helps me understand who they are and where they're coming from. Oftentimes we can get caught up in the work. We begin to tell stories about the people in front of us, breaks down those stories. And it gives folks an opportunity to really share who they are. So this is where I'm from, and then I want to hear where you're from. So I am from Pots on the Stove, from Bluebell Ice Cream and Quaker Oats. I am from the Red Brick Two-Story, Trailer Home, Duplex, and the woods behind them. I'm from aloe vera plants, growing wild against the broken down red truck. I'm from Great American Cookie Cakes on your birthday and curly brown hair. From Roxanne and Salvador. I'm from talking too loudly and with your, from get your elbows off the table, and I'm so proud of you. I'm from church on Sundays, fried chicken Sundays, nap all afternoon Sundays. I'm from Austin, Texas, and San Luis Potosí, Mexico. Barbacoa tacos and barbecue chicken. From Papa Grande running away from the police with his shoe shine kit, the scar on my brother's lip, and the other on his eyebrow. The pictures of family members now gone, the yellow cigar box sitting empty, the UT football cap unmoved from the altar in the front room, sacred elementos honoring the lives of those that came before. Where are you from? Go ahead and respond to this poetry template. Write where you are from, but stop at the name of family member and another family member. So from my poem, I would stop at I am from Roxanne and Salvador. I'll give you 5 minutes to write your poem. Same format, you'll go into breakout rooms and share your poem with a colleague. just in case you need it or you want it, I'm going to take the screen off for a bit and give you the URL to the poem, and that way you can see it more easily. Oh, never mind. Looks like I don't have the URL handy. Sorry about that, y'all.
Hi, everybody. I actually have the URL from a previous session, so I just popped it into the chat for everyone.
You're the best. Thank you, Elizabeth. Okie dokie, y'all. My timer has gone off. It has been 5 minutes of writing time. Can you let me know, yes, I am ready to go, thumbs up, or show me how much more time do you need? Do you need 1 more minute? Do you need 2 minutes? Yes, I'm good to go. Thank you, Debbie. Awesome. Thanks, y'all. Ruth, we are stopping at the name of family member and another family member. Okie doke. I'm going to send us to breakout rooms. Looks like we've got a couple of folks hanging back. Susan or Lisa, do you need help getting to breakout rooms, or you got it? Awesome. Welcome back to the few of you who are back. Wait for our colleagues to join us. Awesome. Welcome back, everyone. I would love to hear from Renee. Renee, if you could unmute yourself. I want to hear from you. What did you have in common with your colleagues or a colleague?
Our background and how we made our transition into higher ed. We are both from a K-12 background.
Awesome. So you have that commonality of being K-12, transitioning into higher ed. That's great.
Yes.
I'm curious to know how do those parts of you, that K-12 perspective to higher ed, how do those parts of you show up in your work in higher ed?
They still do.
Yep.
Steve earlier was talking about being grounded and speaking with students. And I immediately realized within the first year that I was in higher ed, I went into institutional effectiveness. And sometimes that can be 40 hours a day in my office in front of the computer alone. And the connection, I realized that I was missing that connection from students. So I began, I have adjunct classes in psychology to make that connection with students, and also to put stories to the data that we're collecting.
Something that I'm connecting on here is how it sounds like there's a theme within this group of getting closer to student experiences. So when we are not interacting with students every day, how can we recreate our own work life to get close to those student experiences? I think that's key. I'm also learning from you, Renee, about how useful it is to place those student stories forward in front of the data. And that's really the work that we're doing towards a qualitative understanding. How can we get a qualitative understanding of what's behind this quantitative data?
Right, there's a lot of data that quantitatively speaks to certain individuals. But if I purely want to capture them, others in the room as well, if I can tell the story, the qualitative story behind the numbers, then that is proven to be more impactful.
I'm curious, Renee, do you find any hurdles in responding to those student stories when you're advancing equity? Or what hurdles do you find?
Part of those hurdles, I would have to say, relates to time. Within all the responsibilities that processes that everyone in different areas have, yet they're going to be called on to have our data become actionable. It is time, and how do we do that?
Awesome. Thank you, Renee. I appreciate you being able to dialogue back and forth here. Susan, I'd like to hear from you if you could unmute yourself. How do you see yourself using the I Am From poem, either with your work with students or with your work with colleagues, maybe in another space?
I think it does help everybody kind of get to know each other better. And that way, a lot of times if you feel like you know each other, you're going to be able to communicate better. And you're not as likely to dismiss somebody.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you nailed it on the head here, that an exercise like this forces relationships to slow down. It kind of forces the work of really hearing where each other is from, quite literally, and that in turn can be used in our equity work. So I do think that this is something that you could use with colleagues throughout the year to return to. I have written this poem 3 or 4 times and have returned to it with my colleagues 3 or 4 times. And, you know, we're a very emotive group, and every single time there's some sort of tears that come up for us because it's like, wow, I didn't know that that's what you've been through. I can totally see why you're passionate about X, Y, and Z. So I hope that you can use this with colleagues and especially with students.
It also helps us see how similar we are sometimes too. We might think we're so different, but we're really not that different, you know, sometimes.
I agree, Debbie. Absolutely. You can see those similarities and move forward with that. That's when we're humanizing the work, right? We're seeing each other in our stories. Love that, Debbie. Thank you. I'm looking for a cold call volunteer here. Vanessa, could you unmute yourself and read this quote that we have? Vanessa's not on anymore. Let's see. Could I have Steve from UTSA? I know I leaned on you before. Could I have you read this quote for us?
Sure. Living our identities is much like breathing. We don't have to ask ourselves each morning who we are. We simply are. Identity is never fixed. It continually evolves, but something in it stays constant. Even when we change, we are recognizably who we are, who we have always been. Identity links the past, the present, and the social world into a narrative that makes sense. It embodies both change and continuity, from Ruth Ellen Josselson, Clinical Psychology, Field Graduate University.
Lovely. Thank you so much, Steve. Appreciate that. In chat, I want to hear from each of you what is relevant about this quote in our work with students. How does this quote apply to our students? Debbie says, let them know it's okay to be themselves. Whew, that resonates with me, absolutely. Ruth, our identities are natural to us. We are who we are. Renee, we are the sum of all of our experiences. We are all works in progress. Absolutely, Renee. Something that I want to give us permission, both for ourselves and our students, I want to give us permission to change. Give us permission to change our minds, to change our opinions, to be able to say, I thought one thing and now I think something else. It's okay for us to change. Louise says, identity necessitates self-awareness. Yes, self-awareness needs a support structure. I could get behind that, Louise. I agree. Yes, Samantha, South Texas, y'all are bringing it. Of course you are. It's okay to be proud of your story, whatever that story may be, because it is your story. Absolutely. Let's center our students in the work and let them know it's okay to be you. Whatever you're bringing to the table, I see as unique, I see as a strength, I see as finding a home here at our institution. Thank you for being you. This is right on. When it comes to equity-minded leadership, we're going to continue that conversation on really looking at the strengths that our students bring. So asset-based thinking and deficit-based thinking, I really see as a helpful paradigm for embodying equity values or for embodying the values of equity-minded leadership. So we are going to apply deficit versus asset-based thinking onto that quantitative data that we talked about earlier. So we're moving from qualitative data to quantitative data. How do we talk about it through an asset-based lens? Deficit-based thinking often sees deprivation in students. It sees what our students are lacking, what are they missing, what are they needing. Most often this occurs when we're looking at communities of color. Even when we are from those communities, we can sometimes more often than not, we can see the deprivation more quickly and more readily. So deficit thinking sees deprivation in students, and it often overgeneralizes the student experience instead of acknowledging all of the powerful potential and strengths and weird and wonderful things that our students bring to our campuses or our communities bring to our campuses. Y'all are already hip to this because I heard in the earlier conversation that we should be listening to students and communities and designing learning experiences based on what they're telling us. Y'all know this. Let's take it a little bit further and apply that same concept to the way that we literally talk about our data. Not making excuses for it, instead looking for opportunities. So to that end, asset-based thinking prioritizes strengths, prioritizes opportunities. If you're going to take away anything from today's session, take this away. The way we talk about our students can have a major impact on the way we think about improving student achievement. And I see some head nodding because we also know this just as in relationships. The way that we talk about folks that we are in relationships with impacts the texture, the quality, the kind of relationship that we have with them. So whenever we talk about students from a needs-based, deficit-based perspective, we are in effect erasing all of the unique strengths that they bring to the table. So that's my challenge that I'm putting forth here, is that let's really pay attention to the language that we're using when we talk about students, especially when we talk about their student success. So asset-based thinking or asset-based approaches as you're gathering are really strengths-based, opportunity-focused, and it's internally focused. What do I have at my disposal within my office? And it's about holding the institution accountability, holding ourselves accountable, as opposed to blaming our students. So I'm looking for opportunities. What do I know has been successful for our Hispanic students, for our African American students? How can I build off of that success? Or how can we as an institution build off of that success to impact the success of all of our students? Really asking the question, what is present that we can build on? So it's opportunities focus, strengths based. A lot of people say asset-based thinking is simply just being positive. I can quibble with that a little bit because it's not necessarily just being positive. We don't have rose-colored glasses on. We're not like moving towards ignorance or working within ignorance. We're really recognizing the strengths that are present. How can we use those strengths and build off of them? Whereas deficit-based is needs-driven. It's seeing all of the things that we're lacking. It's problems focused and it's externally focused. What I mean is we will look for outside resources to improve on problems instead of looking at what is already within our circle. Who do I know? What do I know? What do my colleagues know? How can I use the strengths that are already here to respond to some of the hurdles that we have? Deficit-based thinking tends to blame the student or tends to blame the communities with whom we partner with. I think oftentimes within education circles, we tend to blame the teachers that came before, right? Higher ed, oh, this is just K-12. We really need to get back on K-12. And then in K-12, we say, well, this is really pre-K. We need to look at what pre-K is doing. And then it goes back to, well, this is really the parents or this is the caregivers issue. Instead, let's take accountability for us, right? We're not trying to change our students. Our students are already bringing so much to us already. Let's change our institutions. So deficit-based thinking asks, what additional knowledge, skills, resources will we need to find to tackle these pressing problems? The reason why that's deficit-based is because when we ask those types of questions, we're looking to go outside of our locus of control. I'm pushing us, let's see what we have inside our offices, inside our institutions. So when we talk about the achievement gap or when we talk about gaps between students, what I'm going to push us on is to start using the term education debt. And the reason why I want us to start using education debt is when we use that gap language, we are often comparing our low income Black and brown students to upper income white peers. And that's not the comparison that we're trying to make because it actually erases the generations and the generations of systematic and historical oppression that our Black and brown students have faced within the education system. I am so proud about the fact that I'm first gen. I'm a first gen college grad because of the stories that I know that my grandparents face interacting with the education system. Not being allowed to speak Spanish at school, not being allowed to be their fully unique selves in our institutions, right? And so education debt acknowledges that generational oppression that has gone on by institutions. So here's the work. This is Northwest Texas data. We're going to be having South Texas data in a moment. We've got a data point. We are going to apply asset-based thinking to this data point. So this is how we do it. We're going to be opportunity focus and institutional accountability. That's what we're going to do. This is the data point. 60% of Hispanic female first-time undergraduates graduate from Northwest Texas public universities in 6 years. There's the data point. Now, I am not blaming students. I'm not saying, well, actually, I need to know how many Hispanic students are in the Northwest region. I'm not looking for more information. I'm just going to use asset-based language to respond to this data point. Our region has successfully served 60% of Hispanic female students. How have we been successful with our 60% of Hispanic female students? How can we build off of that success? So I'm really looking at opportunities and I'm looking for institutional accountability. I've talked enough, now I want y'all to talk. Here's your data in front of you. I see you looking at it. I want you to capture it either with your phone, capture it, or take a screenshot or write it down. But grab that data because I'm going to send you to breakout rooms. And in breakout rooms, I want you to discuss this question. How would you utilize asset-based thinking talking about this South Texas data? Okay, I'm going to send you to breakout rooms. How would you talk about this data through asset-based thinking? Right now, you should be going to breakout rooms. If you minimize your screen, you might see that dialog box. Awesome. Welcome back, y'all. Samantha, if you could unmute yourself, how did you and your colleagues talk about this data through an asset-based lens?
Sure, and I just want to thank Elizabeth for helping me on that. So we talked about how we have successfully graduated over 50% of all women, all females attending our university.
Lovely. I hear you being opportunity focused. I love that you, in some ways, and we've pushed against this in other sessions before, but you've grouped students together and you've said how the institutions have successfully served this group of students, female identified students. Awesome, awesome work. There's another set of data, brand new set. This focuses on CTCs, not universities. I want you to respond in chat, either privately to me or to everyone. How would you talk about this data with an asset-based lens? Just like Samantha's example, opportunity-focused, institutional accountability. Debbie, it is hard. It's a lot harder than we give ourselves credit for. Absolutely. Luis, I love this example you gave us. The CTC sector is expanding the economic opportunity for 32% of Hispanic males or 37% of Hispanic females. I love that you identified that when our students achieve or earn degrees, it is expanding economic opportunity, right? There's so many overlapping impacts that can happen for our students. Absolutely. Elizabeth says we have the opportunity to better serve about 70% of our African American students. You're right, that is a clear opportunity. Awesome, Elizabeth. Coordinating board folks are showing out. What about Cindy, Vanessa, Lisa, Susan? I want to hear from y'all in chat. What are you thinking? It's okay. I'm going to give you permission right now. It's okay to take what a colleague said and apply it to another set of data here. Susan says, I'm hearing every other word. Ooh, I hope it's not my internet breaking up.
You're clear, so I think it might be on Susan's side, unfortunately.
Okay. Thanks, Elizabeth. So what we're trying to do here, I trust that y'all are thinking through this right now and you're processing. What we're trying to do here is when we literally talk about our data in our offices and with our colleagues, we want to apply that asset-based lens that's opportunity focused and places accountability on us, our institutions. Not blaming students, not blaming COVID-19, not blaming what's going on outside, but instead being accountable for what we can do inside. Remember, our students don't need to change. Our institutions do. Okay, I want to know where you are right now. You've got 4 questions in these quadrants. Let's see, Cindy says, over 30% of Hispanic and African American students have demonstrated success in CTCs. Opportunities for growth are a priority. I like this, Cindy. I'm kind of thinking back and forth about, it sounds like we're allowing students to own that success. Students have demonstrated the success, but I also want to recognize that our institutions have created that success, have designed that success too. Samantha, would it be assets-based if we said we have an opportunity to increase Hispanic female success rates by over 60%? I think that is asset-based. You're looking for the opportunity, Samantha, that's present there in the data. Great. Thanks for taking my challenge and responding. I appreciate that. Now, where are you? What's going to happen here is you'll respond to every single question on your own, and then I'll have every single person share out their response to one of these questions. And as you get ready to respond, I just want to flag here, in past sessions, folks have needed clarification on what I mean by personal identity areas or by identity areas. What I mean is issues of identity. So issues of gender, cisgenders, transgender, non-binary students, how are we meeting their needs? Veterans, trauma experiences, issues around gender, race, ethnicity, age. How are we responding to those identity areas? I see you, Debbie. Thank you. I'm going to give you, let's see, 5 minutes to respond to these questions. Okie doke, folks, I can't believe it, but 5 minutes is already up. I was responding to a couple of chat needs privately. So I hope I answered your questions. Thank you. Thank you, Renee. I have our order of who we're going to share out in chat right now. So we'll first start with Steve, and we'll share just one quadrant that we're responding to. So Steve, start us out. Where?
Yeah, I'm gonna take the lower. I mean, I think that 5 minutes wasn't enough for me actually. Really, I think the support area would really help me. Language and also tools and resources to help facilitate conversations with colleagues. I'm planning some retreats this summer, and a big part of our topic is going to be around asset versus deficit thinking. And you know, myself and my background informs that, and you know, I want to make sure that people are comfortable. I'm not always, you know, I think that goes to my stuck part too, right? This isn't my discipline necessarily. I educate myself, and I think I'm pretty good at listening, but we can always be better at things. But how to move forward with this work, I'll be honest, is a bit of a struggle for me at this point. You know, to just from my place where I'm at. So having folks and partners and colleagues who can help me with that is really, I mean, it's a big ask, I know, but that's where I'm at. I can't believe it took me 5 minutes to get to that, but.
It's like when we slow down, all of the things come up to the surface. So I get it, Steve. First, I'm going to share my email with everyone. So please take my email and use it as a resource. I would love to support you in this upcoming retreat that you have with colleagues, Steve. I think I know when it comes to issues of identity and unpacking that stuff with colleagues for the end goal of equity in education, what can often happen, and this is some tricky stuff, some of us might have experienced, is in our good efforts, we can actually re-traumatize either ourselves or our colleagues. And that can be super, super tough and uncomfortable. I think especially for our colleagues of color, it can turn into a moment where for white folks, and I'm a white Latina, I play in spaces. For white folks, we're trying to humanize our colleagues of color, and that in and of itself is problematic. So we should be performing that work in front of our colleagues. So I would love to help you with that. When we're in the success space, it is so powerful. So thanks for sharing your stack and your support, Steve. Renee, what about you? Where are you? Oh, Renee's off. Ruth, what about you?
I'm here. I waited until.
Hey, Renee. I'm glad you're here.
So I have one that keeps coming up, and I actually came in here with the intention that it keeps coming to mind. When we are in an institution that is anywhere from 70 to 80% Hispanic serving, and the issue of equity arises, or how do we define equity for our institution? It's getting beyond well, that's who we are. That's the population we serve. It's really getting beyond just that general answer and diving down deep into how are we truly serving our students, and are we being equitable in our services, in our processes, in our deliveries of education.
Thank you, Renee. I appreciate you sharing that piece and that support piece. Sounds like you and your institution are really drilling down on equitable practices. What are our equitable practices that we're utilizing? I know it's tough and it can be tiresome, always asking the same questions over and over and over again, but I also believe that those equitable practices can come into play. It takes time, it takes practice. And I recognize the way that I present, as young as I am, that there is a little bit of like, well, but it does take time. It really does. Thank you, Renee. Ruth, where are you?
So I echo what Steve and Renee had brought up for me in terms of, you know, how we dialogue in terms of changing the glasses half empty approach to the glasses half full approach. What is the language there, but not to not to take away from the issues that are at hand. You can turn things in a positive, have a positive slant to it, but yet there's still those things that should be looked at and trying to, I don't want to use the word fix, but at least, you know, put in practices that will help. For me also is, I forgot where I was at. I was focused on you know, how do we, you know, address the deficit mindedness? How do we address that and make that work? What Renee had indicated about, you know, yes, we do work in primarily Hispanic serving institutions or minority serving institutions, HBCUs, et cetera. So that shouldn't automatically, we shouldn't automatically float all boats by putting in initiatives that will work across the collective. But how do we put in particulars to assist those particular groups that could benefit from additional help? So that's what I wrestle with. It comes back to the equity versus equality definition.
Thank you, Ruth. I appreciate those reflections. And we share those reflections, right? This is part of the accepting and expecting non-closure, that we aren't going to walk away with so many solutions today. We just aren't. Because, and this is bringing it a step further, but I trust this group can go there with me. What we're really doing together is we're dismantling oppressive cultures and oppressive systems. That's what we're hoping to do, is really upend what we know has been ineffectual for generations and generations and generations. And something like deficit versus asset-based thinking really is rooted not in that dismantling work, but in that one-on-one relational work. So if you're giving that feedback to your colleagues and they are not taking the bait, they're not meeting that bid, that relationship bid, if they're not taking that bid, then we know that we need to move on and keep it moving, because we can't waste our time on teaching others how to humanize the folks that we partner with, right? Instead, we need to do the work. That is directly from Bev Downing, one of our colleagues in our last session. She really made that known for us, that we need to instead keep on moving onwards and upwards. Cindy, I'm not sure if you're still here. Yes, you are. If you could unmute yourself, tell us, where are you?
Well, I'm kind of all over the place.
I'm always all over the place.
So forgive me for that. But I think, you know, when I look at the word stuck, where am I stuck on something? I think about trying to understand student priorities, what their motivation is, and understanding barriers. And someone mentioned it earlier about the solutions that we have or we think we have. Are they really solutions? How have we engaged students in what that should look like? Because I know that looking at some of our unit data and trying to be as supportive as possible, there are students that it appears don't have barriers as to enrolling in the next term, but for some reason they haven't. And trying to understand their motivation, having that feeling of connectedness with students, that the institution, it's not just an institution, there's people here that care and want to be connected to you. And we want the university to be a place that you come to, you make progress, you learn more about yourself and you graduate. And having students really learning how to best connect with that purpose of the student for me is at times I'm stuck on student purpose.
Cindy, it's such a privilege to just know you for these 2 hours. I really, really appreciate you centering your stuck on the student experience, because that is exactly, I think, what we should all be stuck on. When it comes to our students' sense of belonging, I'm going to offer a resource that I hope is valuable to you. The work of Professor Roberto Gonzalez out of Harvard Graduate School of Education centers on students' sense of belonging primarily for undocumented students. That being said, it applies across the board. So his text, his book, Lives in Limbo by Roberto Gonzalez, was really, really foundational for me, and it helped me unpack these measures of belonging. This is good for everyone in terms of qualitative work. His work is centered on qualitative work. So Roberto Gonzalez, Lives in Limbo. Thank you so much, Cindy. Samantha, where are you?
So I think, when I think coming from a K-12 world into higher ed and seeing different groups of students, I think, where I'm stuck is the LGBT community and helping them not understand, but helping our universities be more, I'm going to say, open and accepting of this group and providing support. And how do I become part of that to ensure our universities are providing that support? And it really hit when we did the exercise about telling our story, right? And being proud of who we are and helping these kids in the community be proud of who they are.
Samantha, I so appreciate you bringing up our LGBTQIA students, lesbian, gay, bi, trans, queer, intersex, and asexual students, right? Everyone underneath the rainbow. I totally am with you that in addition to Steve's point of learning the language of equity, how can we better implement the labor of equity on behalf of our queer students? I think for a lot of us, it first starts with the language and then it moves to the labor. I was working with one client on this very issue, and the data point that I use from the University of Texas is that when it comes to our transgender students, by just using their chosen names and their pronouns, we are reducing rates of suicide and depression by 70%, 70. So it matters so much if we use our transgender students' names, our non-binary students' pronouns. When we know how to do those things, we are literally saving lives. So that point can't be missed. Thank you for offering that up.
A level of comfortness, right, for various generations. And I mean, it is.
Absolutely, right? It's recognizing, I didn't know this before. Now I know this. My opinion is changing. I didn't, it's being okay with not knowing and now knowing. Thank you so much, Samantha. Debbie, where are you right now? I think, let's see, I got a couple of notes.
I'm here.
Awesome.
So Cindy and I work at the same institution, and I think what I'm stuck on is finding a way to communicate with students in an effective way so that they understand what we're trying to communicate to them, to help them to finish some of the obstacles or to get through some of the obstacles that are in their way. But then also a little bit along the same lines of what Renee was saying is sometimes as an institution of higher education, you would think that we would accept the need to change, but it seems like we don't. We always want to do things the same way or the way we've done them in the past instead of changing them. And I kind of have an example, and Catherine's heard this one before, but maybe we could redefine what success is for our students. You know, we always say it has to be a 4-year, you have to graduate in 4 years. When we know in the environment that we live in now, our students have to work, to help pay for their education. We know that they have other obligations, but that doesn't mean they're not successful. It just takes them a little bit longer. So why can't we move the graduation rate to 6 years and say, this is, a better measure of success than trying to force everyone to fit into a 4-year mold that maybe worked 15 or 20 years ago when most of the time that a student went to school, that's all they focused on was school, instead of moving it to where we are today, where we know that there are other obligations, but the students are no less successful. They're even more successful because they're handling more than just school. So, it's a little bit of frustration with, I guess, institutional ways, and then a little bit of frustration with not knowing how to get our messages across to the student to help them have an easier path, so those are kind of my two stuck-ons.
Debbie, I know all of us are on those stuck-ons too. As you were speaking, me and your colleagues are both shaking our heads big time. The questions that are coming up for me, we don't need to answer these, but the questions for me are, what is the purpose of education? Can we go back to that question in our institutions and really ask, what's the purpose of education? How do we define success for our students? And I think by asking those questions, we are slowly turning this big ship, because these questions are so easy to ask, but really so hard to respond to. And it's slow and it takes time, but really, really asking these questions is so important. I'm with you, Debbie. I can't wait to see what comes out of your institution. Luis saved the best for last. What's coming up for you? Where are you?
All right, well, thank you. What's coming up for me is in that upper right-hand quadrant, successful. So piggybacking a little bit about what some of the folks here are saying, to me, I think changing the narrative of community to come into higher education. So for example, it comes a little bit from marketing, right? And marketing research to say, if you come from this zip code, if you come from this school district, and you're this particular ethnicity or race, here's what we can expect. So those preconceived biases already started. Mm-hmm. I think that students have the opportunity to have their own narrative of success. What does it mean to them, right? Because it's not just, well, I'm here to be an engineer. Or I'm here to be a doctor, I'm here to be a musician. It's, what are they looking to get out of that experience? What are they looking to take out of it once they graduate and go back into their community or go into a larger community? How are they going to play a role in the greater environment? Because I've heard this from a lot of people in the data community, and it's become more real to me in the immediate present. And that's that, don't get caught up in the numbers. So hypothetically, let's say we had like 95% of Hispanics and African Americans completing their degrees in CTCs or 4-year universities. That's not the end of the story. What are they getting out of it? How are they helping their community? How are they being part of a greater society? Just the numbers alone, the degrees alone, I think that sometimes we get caught up in trying to understand what that is, and that's because we get caught up in someone else's narrative. And if we have our own narrative to say like, well, it's 30% of Hispanics, 40% of African Americans. Let's figure out what they're doing. You know, are they on boards? Are they being part of something greater than just their career? Are they inspiring new generations? And I think that's, for me, growing up, that's what I want to do. I want to be part of that group of people that inspired, you know, the people coming up behind you to say like, hey, we're going to be the next to do whatever we want to do. So for me, it's success and defining it on your own terms.
Awesome. Luis, I also feel like you gave us like a charge rooted in this session, which, hello, you've been to all the sessions, so you know them. But this charge around, we write the narratives of our students, both implicitly and explicitly. When we talk about data, when we talk about the student experience, we're writing those narratives. So how can we let students write their own narratives? How can we give up that control? I think is what I got from what you brought up. Folks, this was such a great session for me as a facilitator. I hope that you were able to receive a lot out of it, really rooted in our students' experiences and being able to respond to those experiences. Simultaneously, I hope that we know that as institutions, we need to change. Our students don't need to change, right? We need to change. And we need to get back to those questions around, what's the purpose here? What's the purpose of education? So I hope that that's what you got from today's session. I'm now going to drop into our chat our exit ticket, and I hope, and then I'll pass it along back to the coordinating board. I'm going to drop my email into the chat so that y'all have that as a resource. Thanks, everyone. So coordinating board.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you
Rachel.
so much, Rachel. So I just want to say thank you to everyone. I was listening in on your conversation. So we really appreciate your level of engagement and your sharing your ideas and your plans to take this work or continue this work at your institutions. And so that is our ultimate goal, that we will take this and continue to advance the work to a different level. And that's definitely something that we want to do at the coordinating board as well. We know that we have this grant and we've used these funds for the regional meetings, but I am hopeful that opportunities will present themselves so that we can continue the work at the coordinating board that will also allow us to be able to provide additional support for you at the institutions. Certainly, I'm here, excuse me, I'm here, Luis is here. We're here to support you, and we want you to reach out to us. If there's anything that you would at least ask of us, we will do what we can to help. And just know that we are here to support you. So I applaud you in the work that you've already done and the plans that you all have to continue going forward. So thanks again to Rachel. We appreciate it. And at this point, we are going to make a transition to introduce you all to the data dashboards that we've put together for the regions. And so I will turn you into the hands over to Elizabeth and Luis. Thanks, everyone.
Okay, so as Ruby said, now we're going to transition into looking at some more of the data points that we have for your region. Basically, this is an opportunity for us to introduce you to our dashboards. Think of this as version 1.0 of our dashboards. So we wanted to take advantage of this opportunity to let you get a sense of sort of what we're doing and get some initial feedback and thoughts on the dashboards. We will be sharing a link with you where you can play around a little bit. And this link will continue to be good after today. However, we can't guarantee this will be the permanent location for the dashboards. Once we're ready to officially roll those out to everyone, we will of course send out communications to all the institutions letting them know that they're available. But in the meantime, you are welcome to play around with them and let us know your thoughts on those. And with that, I will hand it over to Luis to walk us through some cool tips and features on our dashboards.
Okay, thanks, Elizabeth. I'm about to share with you my screen so you can take a look at the dashboards. give me a thumbs up or a high five or any kind of sign, smoke signals that you can see this. All right, good. No smoke signals, but I'll take it.
Oh, that reminded me, Luis. I forgot to ask people. As Luis is going through, if you see something you really like, give us a 5 in the chat. If you see something you're not that fond of or you don't think makes a lot of sense, then give us a 1 in the chat so that we can kind of get a sense of what you're thinking about what we're showing you. Thank you.
And if something really blows your mind, give us a 20. So that's your 5 fingers, your other 5 fingers, your 5 toes, and your other 5 toes. So give us a 20 if something blows your mind, okay? What we're gonna go through the next few minutes, I'm gonna show you the dashboards for both the regional targets and then the institutional completions. What I'm going to show you are 5 features that we baked into the design of the dashboard, and then 3 manual tips to help you with some self-discovery analysis. And because you're my region and you've been so engaging this afternoon, I'm going to show you a couple more things that I haven't showed the other regions. So by the end of this session, you'll be able to teach the other regions some new tricks. Okay. So
not fair, Luis, not fair. I'm just kidding.
It'll be our little secret. So this URL is Elizabeth mentioned, we're going to share with you in a little bit so you can go ahead and use some of these tips. So let me walk you through them. I'm going to start at 60 by 30 regional dashboards. And I'm going to put this into full screen view so we can get a good look at it. All right, so right now we're looking at Upper East, and I'll change that data in just a minute because I want to give you a lay of the land first. So up top, you see regional targets overview, and it has a white background. The reason it's a white background because that's the active view of the data we're having our screen that I'm going to guide you through. You see some other tabs to the right of that, so 60 by 30 educated population, all the way to direct enrollment. They're in gray because right now they're not active, and so they're just in the background, but you can click on them and get to that data. So up top is where you start navigating through all the different views, okay? When we designed this dashboard, our goal was to bring 2 parties together from the start. So those parties would be 1, folks who've been involved with the regional target work since the beginning, so about almost 3 years ago, folks who understand this data very well. And then the second party would be the folks who are brand new to this data, who just heard of it and want to get familiarized with it. So the way that we did it is that we put up top of every view, we put a succinct narrative. So the narrative is going to basically tell you what data are you viewing and how to start using this data for your purposes. So the first thing that we say is, you select a region. So that's the first feature that we baked into the design, is that you select a region, and by doing it on any of these views, it's remembered throughout the dashboard. So you can do this once and set it. So right now it's on Upper East. Let's change it to South Texas. And you'll see that the color changes. So this is all to help brand a little bit better the South Texas region. So that's the first feature that we put there. The thing that we try to do with the first page is that we try to give you a sense of, okay, well, what's your progress since 2015, the start of the 60 by 30 plan? And so down below, you see these horizontal bars. They're all progress charts for the 3 target areas. So educated population, completion, and direct enrollment. And the first black line is the 2015 data. And it also has the data right next to the line. The end of the bar chart is 2018 data, and the dotted green line is a 2030 target set by the coordinating board, okay? So we wanted to make graphics that would be easy for people to understand, be intuitive, and that's what we try to do with all of our graphics. The second feature that we baked into the regional dashboards, and you'll see it throughout the views, are these gray rectangles up here, usually up top, okay? Those are called bands, or other people call them KPIs, key performance indicators. What they're set out to do is to bring into focus numbers that we think should get your attention. So for example, in 60 by 30 educated population, completion, and direct enrollment, we wanted to call out the 2018 current data and also 2030 target. So you can get a quick look as to what's the latest data and how far off are you from your 2030 target, okay? And so that data would be updated in each new iteration of the dashboard. So that's feature number 2. Then I want to show you feature number 3. Feature number 3 has to do with keeping this view in a clean display, okay? So I navigated over to completion by demographics. And the thing that I want to show you is that you have all this data here, but it may leave some questions like, well, how do you define completions? You know, what percentage of that ethnicity or race is part of that overall bar chart? Okay, so we did this for you this way. So we have something called tooltips. These tooltips start to pop up when you use your mouse, so you can hover and discover. And they're all over the dashboard. So once you start pointing your mouse on there, you'll get this little hand that pops up, and right next to it's a rectangle, and it'll give you more information on that data. So it'll give you a definition, it'll give you even more data. So let's look at the stacked bar charts. So for example, let's look at this data here. It gives you the race, ethnicity, what region it is, the hard counts that you can see on the screen. But what this also gives you is the percent. What percentage of Hispanic students are represented by that green part in the bar chart? Also, how do we define other? So getting all that information out there we thought was going to be important to folks. And so we put them all over. And you'll have the opportunity to go ahead and play around with that once we give you the URL, okay? And now I'm going to jump over to direct enrollment to show you something else that we built in. So as you can see, the dashboard keeps remembering that this is for South Texas data that we want to see. Again, here's the band. Something else that we did in this band for direct enrollment is that we actually put in the percentage of direct enrollment from South Texas for high school to higher education enrollment for the year 2018. And we have it in a couple of other places as well, but we wanted to make sure that, you know, folks who view this can easily see that. So there's one place where you can see it. Down in the upper left, lower left line graph, you also see it with the light purple means enrolled, 52% there, okay? And you'll also get a little tooltip that comes up, as I mentioned. So it'll tell you not only the year, but also the students, and you already see the percentage in the line graph. The other place that you'll also see it is that in this band, it's broken down by sector. So as you can see, 3.6% of students enroll in independent, 23.9% in public 2-year, and 24.5% in public universities. So that's one of the things that we want to have you be able to see. Now, first, we wanted also to bake in some self-discovery analysis. And the way that we did that is under select a school district, we have something called a highlighter. And what that is simply a drop-down list. And this drop-down list is of the ISDs in the South Texas region. So you wouldn't have to guess, is this ISD part of just overall Texas, or is it just part of South Texas? Well, we made it easy, so it's just part of South Texas, if you may not be familiar with each ISD in there, okay? The way that you use this is in conjunction with this graph, this box and whiskers plot, which is going to show you direct enrollment by ISDs for the 5-year time period of 2014 to 2018. And all these fuchsia pinkish dots here are representations of ISDs. So we're looking at the percentage of high school to higher ed enrollment for South Texas by ISD in there. So let me show you how you use this. So this highlighter, let's say, for example, we knew we had an ISD we wanted to see. And this is something that I'm going to teach you that I haven't taught the other folks. So this is actually a smart bar. So you can just start typing out a few letters, and we'll look at South Texas ISD. Okay. And so now a lot of, or the majority of the dots have, you know, been grayed out. So they're a lot lighter than before, but there are 5 dots that stand out. Those 5 dots are the South Texas ISD. So you can take your mouse to it and it'll give you more information on South Texas. It will not only give you the data you see in the tooltip popping up, but you can also compare South Texas ISD to other ISDs just by eyeballing it here. And you see that for that time period, South Texas ISD for the most part has been above the median for high school to higher ed enrollment rate in the South Texas region. Now, if you want to see the other dots as well, like who do they represent? Well, you can still put your mouse on those dots and that information will still pop up. It's just that those dots are put to the background so we can give more attention to South Texas ISD for the time being, or whichever ISD you want to choose, okay? Another feature that we baked into this dashboard design is to help folks read and interpret data tables a lot quicker. Because studies show that whether you come from like liberal arts or engineering or some other kind of field, when you're presented a data table, you start looking at, well, is there a pattern here? Which is the biggest? Which is the smallest? And there are 2 ways to make it easier for anyone to read a data table. And the first of it is a 60 by 30 educated population by credential table. The first feature is to have color gradients for the cells. And so for us, the darker the blue, it means that the higher that percentage is. And so you can see straight across that baccalaureate degrees from 2014 to 2018 have been the highest degrees earned in the South Texas region for that time period. So it makes it easier to understand that. Then you can also see, well, which one is the second most, which one is the third most. So it makes it easier on the reader to interpret that data and not have to guess so much. Another better example of it is the table right below it, the population 2018 and 2020 projection targets. And it's a little bit better because not only does it have that blue background, but it has the white font color to help you quickly point out which are the biggest numbers. And so those white numbers stand out versus the other ones because you're like drawn to them. Why are they different? Oh, okay, well, because they're a lot bigger than the other ones. So that will help you with your conversations to other viewers, whether they're on your campus or they're stakeholders off your campus or they're partners. It'll help you with those regional target conversations that you have, okay? And again, there'll be tooltips everywhere you look here. So at this point, let me see if there are any questions.
We did have a question from Samantha, although it looks like she dropped off. She was asking, is there a place that each area is defined on feature number 2?
On the bands?
I'm guessing, I mean, because unfortunately she's not here, so I can't ask for clarification.
Can you just repeat the question again? So
yeah, is there a place that each area is defined on feature number 2?
Is there a place where each feature is defined?
It was on the very first regional targets overview that you were describing, Luis.
Over here? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so can you elaborate on your question?
Well, it wasn't my question, but you were describing each of those areas as different features. And I think she was basically just wondering if, because I had a similar question of how do you define what educated population means or what completion, like all of those different things, like do each of these have a definition?
Yeah, each one has their own definition on there. So yeah, good question. So this one, it'll show you what do we mean by educated population for the South Texas region. Because I think oftentimes when we talk about 60 by 30, we have a statewide view. We're trying to bring a regional view into this. And yes, each one has a definition. So what do we mean by completion? What do we mean by direct enrollment rate? And when you go into each of those views, when you go into the graphs, it'll have that definition in there again. Okay.
That's very helpful. Thank you.
Thank you for the help with elaborating on that. I thought someone else might have a similar question, so that's why I just wanted to bring it up. I have a question. Will people see every ISD for their region listed here?
Is this a planted question?
Yes.
No, good question. Thank you, because I did forget to go over that. No, you will not see every ISD, and the reason is that because of FERPA. Some ISDs, their numbers are too low for us to show the data because we can't protect the privacy of the students. So in order to be FERPA compliant, we just hide them out of the data. So you won't be able to get to it from here.
So what is the cutoff?
Typically 25 students. Any ISD with 25 or fewer students, they're not going to be shown on this box plot. Would it be possible to make the ISDs selected multiple ISDs? Oh, I see. Okay. Well, it looks like you have two questions, Steve, about the color palette and about the
Yeah, it might just be me because I do have a hard time picking off gray backgrounds for stuff and colors, especially the reds and the lighter greens. But yeah, what I was thinking about on the high school districts, that you could always just pick one, but if you wanted to look at a particular, like if I just wanted to do like San Antonio, South, those, different ones, just the San Antonio specific ones, just to see as within San Antonio proper, what are the going rate that, like that, just a kind of a global view of a particular area, that would be helpful.
Okay. I think that's a good feedback to get and a nice challenge to put together. So I like it.
I have great faith in your abilities.
Thank you.
And I do want to say, Steve, thank you for bringing that up. We've had some other regions mention similar concerns with the coloring for their particular regions. So that's definitely something we're going to look at before final rollout, because we definitely want to make sure people can read the dashboard, right? Otherwise, it's not useful. Right. So I have just popped in the link for you to explore the dashboard. And when you click on that link, you're going to notice that there's actually two dashboards. One is the regional target dashboard and the other is institutional completions. So in a little bit, Luis will be taking us through some highlights from the institutional completions dashboard. So in the meantime, we encourage you to play. Unfortunately, we aren't giving you a lot of time, but we're going to give you a few minutes to play around with that and let us know what your initial thoughts are. We're going to launch a poll where we basically just ask you to let us know, do you feel like it's useful? Do you feel like it's easy to navigate? Thank you, Luis. Does it answer questions that you've had about the regional data? And then we have some items for, how might you use the dashboards? And if you have some other ideas, please let us know in the chat what those would be for how you would use them.
And if we get 100% on yes and yes and yes and yes, you'll get my secret banana bread recipe.
Banana bread, is that what you said?
Yeah, secret banana bread recipe.
It must be because y'all are his region. He didn't offer that to anyone else.
Oh.
And if you see anything you particularly like, let us know what that is in the chat about the dashboards. So I see one of you have went ahead and taken the poll for us. Thank you. We're going to give you about 2 more minutes to play around.
I think someone really wants that recipe.
I'm just wondering, have you thought about, because, we see the numbers here, so we see where we're at and we see, where we need to be, but what's hard to determine is, are we on track, I guess. So I know many years ago when we used to track our enrollment metrics, we would say, okay, by January, we need to have this many applications, this many admits, and this many enroll. February, this many. And then we could, so that what that would help us do is see, okay, we're not getting enough applications. Let's put something in place to get more because, we didn't meet this target. Is there a way maybe to give us some data on, you know, maybe where we should be at a certain point in time?
There definitely is, and I think if more of your colleagues and collaborators here would want something like that, you know, if they let us know, that could be something we could try and implement.
Okay.
Thanks for that, Debbie.
What do you think about one more minute, Elizabeth?
Yeah, about one more minute. I see several of you still haven't taken the poll. Please make sure you take that for us.
I have a question, Luis, on the ones that say completions by demographics and completions by credentials, those two tabs. Like you have on direct enrollment tab where it says total high school grads, and then there's like a breakdown. I would like to see on those other tabs a total, like the total number of completions for the area, and then a breakdown of what kind of completion they were. And then, yeah, I think just as at a glance, I think that number would be helpful instead of having to like add it up in your head if you're trying to talk about.
Like
Yep,
a
they're on
total
the left.
Okay, got it. Okay. And you were going to say something else, Catherine?
No, I think I just wanted to clarify that on like for this tab, for example, and the one on completions by demographics that gives by ethnicity, when you click on one of the colors or you hover over one of the colors and it gives you the percentage, that's the percentage of the total number of completions. Is that correct? Like, hold on, I'm looking at yours. So if I'm looking at 17,844 bachelor's degrees in 2015, that 38.6 is the percentage of bachelor's degrees out of all of the completions. Is that correct?
Are you on the regional targets overview tab? Is that?
I am on the completions by credentials on the regional dashboard, yes.
Got it. Okay. And so if we were to look at this one, for example, associates percentage 30.5, is that what you're asking?
Yeah, I'm asking that's like the percentage out of the total number of completions. Is that correct?
Total number of completions for 2014. Yep.
Got it. Perfect.
Is there a way to extract the data so we could maybe do those projections on our own?
Yep, there is. So I think it's been about a minute. You okay if we close the poll?
I already closed it.
You closed it. Okay. All right. So we can, and let me show you by going to the institutional completions dashboard. So let me show you how to get some of that data. And there is a caveat to getting that data. Okay. When I scroll down, on the bottom right is where I go to full screen, and to the left of that is the download button. The download button, you have 3 ways of getting the data. So you'll get this data back here with these graphs, either as an image like a JPEG or PNG or some other kind of file, or a PDF, or you can take this straight into PowerPoint. That's how you can get some of the data.
We can't just get the data to put in an Excel spreadsheet because I can't do that from an image, PDF, or PowerPoint.
Yep. So I'm glad you asked that question because we're on the same track. At this point, you cannot get the data, and the reason you can't get the raw data is because we have not only public data in there, but also data for our ICUTs, the Independent Colleges and Universities of Texas. And we have an agreement with them that we cannot show their gender, economic disadvantage, or their race, ethnicity, raw data. And so with our version of Tableau, you either get all the data or you get none of the data. And to be compliant, at this point, we're not giving any of the raw data. We're trying to figure out ways to work around that to at least give you the public data where you can play around with that.
Okay, Luis, do you want to go ahead and go through the remaining tips?
Yep, let's do that. All right, so I'm gonna go all the way to public completions by race and ethnicity. And these are filters. So this is how I'm filtering the data. I'm gonna change it to South Texas. We also can let you, change it to institution or the year. But the one that I want to show you is that you can change this to either view the value, which you can see right now, or you can see the percent. Because oftentimes one group wants to see value, one group wants to see percent. You have the flexibility to show them one or the other or both, whatever you think is appropriate. So by dropping down to percent, now you see that the data is across the rows. So for example, for the University of Texas Health Science Center in San Antonio, you see the percentage by ethnicity for the year 2018, and across the row, it adds up to 100%, okay? And it does that for every institution. The tab to the right for independent completions by race and ethnicity, you also have ethnicity value of percent, but you also have gender value of percent. So you can play around with either of those two variables to show if you wanna have someone view the hard counts or you wanna show them the percent, okay? One other feature that you get in the institutional completions is this upside down triangle all the way to the left that'll help you navigate the different views besides the tabs up there. So it's a drop-down menu, and you can go on any of the views from there, okay? So those are the 5 things that we baked into the design. Now let me quickly show you the 3 manual tips that you can use to do some self-discovery analysis. Let's change the region to South Texas once again. And what I want to show you is that under select an institution, it still remembered it was Alvin Community College, but there's no such institution in South Texas. Well, if you click, it's a drop-down menu, and all these institutions are tied just to South Texas to make it easier to go ahead and look at the data just for institutions in your region. So let's look at Coastal Bend College. And there we see the progress, and we see the actual data for their completions. These targets for 2030, these are the ones that Coastal Bend College sent into us about 2 years ago. So all these completions in this dashboard for institutional completions come from the institutions themselves, okay? So let me show you something else that you can do here. And let's take it back to Coastal Bend College. Okay. So one thing that I will point out is that from completion credentials, starting at completion credentials by institution, all the way to independent completion by race, ethnicity, and gender, once you choose a region and an institution, from the left all the way to the right, the dashboard will remember that that's what you want to see unless you change it manually, okay? Something else that you can do manually is you look at these hard counts here for completions by credentials, Coastal Bend College, the first stacked bar chart. And you can see on the y-axis, you can see the counts. On the x-axis, you see the years. What I want to show you is that right now the default is that the years are in ascending order. But let's say you get a request from a colleague to say, well, I want to know what year did we have the most completions? What year was number 2, so on and so forth. Well, you can actually sort it just by here. What happens is if you go to the hard count data, a bar chart shows up and it's very small and it has an arrow pointing to the right. By clicking on it, now you're looking at not default view, but now you're looking at descending order. So 2018 was the highest year for credentials for Coastal Bend College, followed by 2017, and 2016 was the lowest year in that time period. So that lets you sort out the data if you wanted to do it that way, okay? Something else that you can do, and this would be tip number 3, is that, let's say, for example, you get another request, someone says, well, I wanna see all the numbers of how many associate degrees we awarded between 2014 and 2018. Well, we have the legend down here that corresponds to each of the colors in the bar chart. Well, if you put your mouse over it and just gently click on it, you get this box that shows up here where it says keep only or exclude, and so shows you that's for associates. By choosing keep only, it shows associate degrees only, okay? And so you can go ahead and sort this data again if you want to show it just by 2014, 2018 ascending order, or if you wanted to keep it this way to sort it by which years were you the highest in descending order. So you have this flexibility to go ahead and do that, okay? Now, let's say your colleague has been playing around with this and they think like, well, what happened to all the other data? How do I get it back? There are a couple of things that they can do to avoid the Homer Simpson syndrome of saying, you know, that it was like that when they got here and just running away. What they can do is, if you're in a Windows environment, you use Control Z, those two keys, and it'll bring it back. Okay, and it'll start remembering all the way you went to. If you're on a Mac environment, your keystroke is Command Z, and that'll work for you. If neither of those keystrokes work for you, you have one more keystroke that you could try to do. It's Control R in Windows, it refreshes the page, or Command R in Mac, it'll refresh the page. If neither of those keystrokes work for you, you can just click out of the data and go back into the URL and you'll get the default view. Okay? So those are some things that you guys can use to run circles around the other regions in terms of using this dashboard when they come up with questions. But at this point, I'll pause to see if you have any questions yourselves.
So can we still play with it for a little bit, like after this meeting, and send you some feedback? Okay.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
The link will still be accessible?
Yes, the link will be good for a while. We aren't sure this will be the permanent link. So it will definitely be available for a while. And we just ask, if you want to share it with some colleagues to ask for feedback, please make sure you let them know this is our preliminary version and not the final version.
Okay.
So, and we've had some other people do that, and we definitely appreciate that feedback. So please, we encourage you to play around with it more on your own and let Luis or I know if you have any additional thoughts after you've had a chance to get more familiar with it. And obviously, if you have questions, we can help you figure out the responses to those as well. So yes, so we just wanted to give you some time here to briefly try it and then give you a chance to sort of look at it on your own as well. So the link will remain active. And with that, unless anyone has any other questions about the dashboards themselves, we're going to go ahead and move into the final portion, which is just, we're going to have some discussion and some Q&A. So I wanted to make sure we had an opportunity for, if there are questions related to the regional work that you all have, that you have the opportunity to ask those. And basically, I would encourage you, if you have a specific question, please put it in the chat. And while you all are thinking about that, there are a few topics that we wanted to go ahead and talk to you about that we thought would be on your minds related to the regional efforts and just things in general. So first off, you know, we already sort of mentioned this at the beginning, Rachel mentioned this at the beginning, but with everything that's going on right now, we recognize that we're sort of in unfamiliar territory, specifically with the impact of COVID-19 on our institutions. And we wanted to make sure that you are aware of a resource that we have at the coordinating board. We have a web page that hopefully you have all seen. If you haven't, I'm posting the link in the chat for you. That basically is sort of our guidance on COVID-19. So we have information on what the latest news is impacting the state, as well as FAQs. So we have facts and questions related to career and technical education, courses, calendars, and reporting, which reporting tends to be a big one, general FAQs, PERK and grant FAQs, and others. And basically, this is just a series of responses to questions we have gotten from the field. So right now, most of the guidance applies to spring and summer. However, we are discussing fall guidance, and my understanding is there's a plan to provide additional updates on that soon. But we encourage you to contact us if you have any questions, because we have a committee at the coordinating board that's looking at this, and basically they decide, hey, is this something that makes sense for everybody? If so, let's incorporate it into the FAQs. If it's more specific to an institution, then we go ahead and respond back to you. But we just want to make sure that we're being a good partner in helping you plan and address as much as you can as we move forward. We know no one has that magic ball that's going to tell us what the impact of COVID-19 is going to be. So we want to make sure you're aware we're here to be a resource. So if you have any questions, please reach out to us. And again, please familiarize yourself with our webpage because we do regularly update that. So that was the first thing that I wanted to point out. The other 2 points are more regionally related. So as your region should know, if you were not able to spend all of your dissemination grant funds that were coming up, expiring August 31st, we have offered the opportunity to extend those remaining grant funds out through August 31st of 2021. And that just requires that we have some paperwork taken care of on our side. I'm hoping that Luis is taking care of that for your region, since he is your key point of contact and our key person to deal with the grants.
Yep, we're good. We got it.
Okay. So just in case you weren't aware, so there was no, we just didn't want institutions, or excuse me, we didn't want the regional groups to lose out on the opportunity to use those funds if they hadn't been able to do so yet. Also, you all may recall, if you've been involved in the regional work for a while, that we typically do 2 surveys that are due at the end of August. One is a regional action plan survey, which sort of looks at, takes stock of, here's what you have done in your region, here's what you plan moving forward. What goes along with that is an institutional supplement survey that we ask each institution to complete, that asks them to basically kind of touch base on what do they think has led to patterns in their data related to 60 by 30, and talks about general awareness for stakeholders across their institutions concerning 60 by 30. So this year, obviously, with everything that's been going on, we plan to incorporate some questions that allow you to think about and talk about how COVID-19 has impacted and potentially will impact your efforts moving forward. But we wanted to check and see, does the August 31st timeline make sense for your region and for your institutions? Or should we be considering moving that date out? So do you all have any thoughts on whether August 31st makes sense for your regional action plan and your institutional supplement surveys?
You know what, speaking for myself and probably Cindy, I don't know that we know that, because that's not really our area, but what we can do is make sure that we tell Susan and that she responds.
Okay, and that's totally fine. We've had other people in other meetings that have been like, hey, I can't answer that for you right now. So we'd like to follow up. Yeah.
So for the Rio Grande Valley's report, I've been taking the lead on that for the last couple of years on writing that out. And then I send it over to folks that are different partners within each of those buckets that we've identified.
Okay.
I would say that given the way COVID is really kind of taking its toll on the beginning of the school year, I would think that in terms of having capacity to review each of those components, it would be helpful if that was done at a later due date, maybe the end of September, after maybe things have calmed down for the beginning of the school year, for both higher ed and in terms of any other groups that might be supporting those reports.
Okay, does Cindy or Ruth, do you have anything you'd like to add?
No, I would agree. I would agree too. We're kind of in flux, I guess, and not sure where we're gonna land, with respect to our strategies.
Right.
And well, being new to the group, Catherine, thanks for clarifying that you have taken the lead on the report. And I certainly think that with so many things going on as institutions make their plans for the fall, that, I mean, this would be the time that if we needed an extension, this is probably that time.
Well, and that's kind of what we suspected, which is why we wanted to ask, because we know institutions and their partners have a lot more on their plate this year planning for the fall than we typically do, which is usually a busy time anyways, because as we have said, no one really knows, right, where we're going with COVID-19. So thank you for that feedback. Debbie, if you have additional thoughts from Susan, please encourage her to reach out to us. But we just wanted to get a sense for where people were, because we don't want to create another burden for you as you try to prepare to open up for your fall semesters. So on a related topic, so For those of you who have been involved with the regional work and have been involved with 60 by 30, you may know that we have sort of talked about 2020 as the key time to sort of take stock of the plan and decide whether we needed to make some adjustments for the plan. So based on that, I wanted to let you know that the leadership at the agency is taking a look at the plan at large, and there may be some adjustments made at this time, and obviously if they are, that will impact our regional work, and we will make sure that is communicated out to everyone. However, we're also cognizant of the point of the fact that this may be a point to like take pause, right? Because of the changes with COVID-19, because of all the things that have been happening culturally, we aren't really sure where we're going from here. And we aren't really sure yet what the impact of COVID-19 has been on our spring and summer at this point. And so rather than being really focused on, are we meeting that target and do we need to change those targets? Instead, we just want to encourage you to do what you do best, which is focus on the students. We think the priority right now is just to make sure we're doing our best to meet the needs of our students. And then we can assess later what makes sense to do with moving forward in terms of adjustments for targets and for the plan in general. So, and we know that that's your #1 priority as well. And so we just want you to know that we're in that with you and that we recognize that that's really where your focus belongs right now. Okay, and then I see I have a question about when will the report templates be sent out? That has not been determined yet because we're trying to determine when we will be deploying them. But please know, we would not give them to you like 2 weeks before and say, hey, please provide us feedback on this. We know you need adequate prep time to answer that, both from the regional perspective and the institutional perspective. So we don't have a definitive timeline yet, but we will soon. And we will communicate out to you when we are planning to do both the surveys and provide the information, the templates for you to start working on them. Okay, do we have any other questions? That was the only thing I saw come up in the chat. Well, then, if we don't have any other questions, then I would welcome Luis if he has any thoughts he would like to add before we depart today about the training to make those.
Well, I just want to say thank you to everyone who participated. You showed that you were really willing to go ahead and go that extra mile with going deep into not only your own experiences, but what you expect the students to get out of it as a result of the equity training. So I'm looking forward to some of the stories that are going to come out from some of the stuff you guys have been talking about doing, like Steve with his leadership training, or other folks who are going to have retreats and things of that nature. So I'm very optimistic. That's my one word for the day.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Luis. I would like to agree. You guys have been awesome today. Appreciate your engagement level. Appreciate your very much focus on understanding the importance of, we need those sort of qualitative stories to help us contextualize our quantitative data and how we move forward. And that's a key piece, right, to us really understanding how to use and apply this equity lens and in our language and in our actual labor towards our institutions. So to that end, I would like to thank Rachel again for her involvement in leading us through this session today. And then I would invite Ruby, if she has any thoughts she would like to impart, to please do so.
Nothing else. Just want to thank everybody, and we look forward to working with you.
Okay, so I know that Rachel already shared an exit survey with you, and I'm sorry, I'm not trying to survey you to death, but Rachel's exit survey is really focused on the training piece itself and how Maya can improve that moving forward and what we can do to help make sure we're moving forward with equity efforts. We have created a separate survey. I just put the link in chat as well as emailed it, that actually has 2 parts. The first part is about the meeting today and your thoughts on that. But the second part is about your thoughts on regional efforts in general and like what what we're doing well and what we can be doing better to help support those regional efforts. So please take the time to give us some feedback on that. And it is about regional efforts at large. There aren't any like pop quiz questions about your data for your region. So we would really appreciate any feedback you have on that. And again, we thank you for your time and your engagement in today's session. So, and with that, unless anyone has anything they'd like to add, I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your afternoon and evening.
Thank you. It was nice
Thanks,
meeting everybody.
everybody.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Nice to meet you all.